The man was waiting by the stage door when Elvis Presley finished his midnight show at the Las Vegas Hilton. Security tried to stop him, but the man just stood there calmly, holding a brown envelope, saying the same thing over and over. Elvis needs to see this. Elvis needs to see this right now. Something about his voice, quiet, desperate, terrified, made Charlie Hodge pause, made him actually look at this stranger's face. The man wasn't a fan, wasn't seeking an autograph. His eyes were filled with something else entirely, fear. And when Charlie finally took the envelope and brought it backstage, when Elvis opened it and saw what was inside, everything he thought he knew about his life shattered in an instant. Act 1. The Stranger. August 3rd, 1974. Elvis had just finished the second show of his 2-week residency at the Las Vegas Hilton. The performance had been exhausting. His weight was up, his energy was down, and the pills Dr. Nick gave him weren't working like they used to. He just wanted to get back to his suite, take something to help him sleep, and forget about tomorrow's shows. Charlie Hodge caught him in the hallway backstage. "Boss, there's a guy at the stage door, been standing there for 2 hours, says he has something you need to see." Elvis sighed. There was always someone with something urgent, a demo tape, a business proposal, a letter from a long-lost relative. It never ended. "Tell him to mail it to Graceland like everyone else." "I tried. He won't leave. Elvis, there's something about him. He's scared, really scared, not fan scared, something else." Something in Charlie's voice made Elvis stop. Charlie had been with him since 1956. 18 years. He knew the difference between a persistent fan and something serious. "What's his name?" "Thomas Webb. Says he used to work for RCA Records in the accounting department." Elvis's stomach tightened. RCA, his record label, the company Colonel Parker had negotiated his contracts with for nearly 20 years. "Bring him in, but keep security close." 5 minutes later, Thomas Webb was sitting in Elvis's dressing room. He was in his 50s, thin, nervous, wearing a cheap suit that's seen better days. His hands trembled as he clutched the brown envelope. "Mr. Presley, I'm sorry to approach you like this, but I didn't know what else to do. I tried calling your management. They wouldn't put me through. I tried writing letters. They never reached you. So I came here because you need to know what's happening." "What's in the envelope?" Elvis asked. Thomas looked around the room, at Charlie, at the security guard by the door. "Can we speak alone?" Elvis nodded to Charlie and the guard. They left reluctantly, closing the door behind them. Thomas opened the envelope and pulled out a stack of papers. Financial documents, spreadsheets, photocopies of contracts. "Mr. Presley, I worked for RCA Records from 1956 to last month. I was in accounting. My job was to process royalty payments to artists, including you." Thomas's voice was shaking. 3 weeks ago, I noticed something wrong with your account, numbers that didn't add up, payments that should have been higher. So I started digging, and what I found..." He spread the documents on the coffee table. "These are your royalty statements from 1956 to 1974, 18 years of payments. And these," he pulled out another stack, "are the actual sales figures, the real numbers. Mr. Presley, you've sold over 500 million records worldwide, but according to your royalty statements, you've been paid for less than half of that." Elvis stared at the numbers. He'd never been good with finances, always let Colonel handle the business side, but even he could see the discrepancy Thomas was pointing to. "Where did the rest go?" "That's what I tried to find out, and that's when things got dangerous." He pulled up his sleeve. His arm was covered in bruises. "Last week, 2 men came to my apartment, told me to stop digging into your account, told me to forget what I'd found. When I refused, they made it clear what would happen if I continued." "Who were they?" "I don't know, but they knew things,
personal things, where my daughter goes to school, where my wife works. They said if I talked to anyone, police, press, or you, my family would pay the price. Then why are you here? Thomas looked Elvis directly in the eyes. Because I have a daughter. She's 16, and her favorite singer is you. She has every album, every poster, sees every movie. And last week, after those men left, she asked me what was wrong. I couldn't tell her the truth, couldn't tell her that her hero is being robbed blind, and I was too scared to help him. He pushed the documents toward Elvis. So I made copies, everything I could find before they fired me yesterday. I made these copies and I came here because somebody has to tell you the truth, even if it costs me everything. Elvis picked up the documents with shaking hands, started reading. The numbers were staggering. Millions of dollars, tens of millions, money that should have been his, but had vanished into accounts he didn't recognize. "Who's stealing from me?" Elvis asked quietly. Thomas hesitated, then pulled out one final document, a banking record showing wire transfers, all from RCA records, all going to a single account. The account name made Elvis's blood run cold. Colonel Parker, his manager, his trusted advisor for 18 years, the man who'd promised to make him a star and had delivered. The man who took 50% of everything Elvis earned, an astronomical percentage, but Elvis had accepted it because Colonel had made him the biggest star in the world. But it wasn't just 50%. According to these documents, Colonel was taking 50% of Elvis's reported income and then pocketing another 25% of the real income that was never reported to Elvis in the first place. Colonel wasn't taking half. He was taking 3/4, and Elvis had never known.
But the theft wasn't even the worst part, because as Elvis kept reading Thomas Webb's documents, he discovered something that proved Colonel's deception went far beyond money. It went to the very core of Elvis's entire career. "There's more," Thomas said quietly. "Keep reading." Elvis flipped to the next section. Contracts. Not the ones he'd signed, or thought he'd signed, but different versions, with different terms. One contract, dated 1956, showed Elvis agreeing to give Colonel 25% of his earnings, standard management fee. Elvis remembered signing this. He'd been 21 years old, grateful to have professional representation. But stapled behind it was another contract, same date, same signatures, but this one said 50%. "Which one is real?" Elvis asked, though he already knew the answer. "They're both real. The 25% version is what you signed, what you were shown. The 50% version is what was filed with RCA and every other company you've worked with. Somehow, after you signed, the terms were changed." "That's forgery." "Yes, and there's more. Look at the movie contracts." Elvis had made 31 movies between 1956 and 1969. He'd hated most of them. Formulaic plots, forgettable songs, same story over and over. He'd wanted to do serious films, dramas, westerns, real acting. But Colonel had always said the musical comedies made more money, that the studios wanted Elvis the entertainer, not Elvis the actor. The documents told a different story. Thomas showed him rejection letters, dozens of them, scripts Elvis had never seen, serious films from major directors, the Wild One sequel with Marlon Brando, a Tennessee Williams adaptation, a John Ford Western, all rejected by Colonel on Elvis's behalf. Why would he turn these down? Elvis asked, though part of him was starting to understand. Because serious films take time, they take commitment. You'd be on location for months, away from Las Vegas, away from touring, away from the schedule Colonel controlled. Thomas pulled out another document, and because of this, it was a profit-sharing agreement between Colonel Parker and the studios that produced Elvis's formulaic movies. For every film Elvis made, the studio paid Elvis his acting fee, which was reported and split with Colonel. But the studio also paid Colonel a separate consulting fee that Elvis never knew about. sometimes more than Elvis's own salary. Colonel had been getting paid twice for every movie and steering Elvis toward bad films because they paid Colonel more. "My entire career," Elvis said slowly, "has been about making Colonel money, not about what's best for me, not about my music or my acting or my legacy, just about keeping me busy and profitable." "I'm sorry, Mr. Presley, but yes, that's what these documents show." Elvis stood up and walked to the window. Below, Las Vegas glittered in the darkness. How many nights had he performed in this city? Hundreds, thousands, year after year, the same venue, the same crowds, the same show, never touring internationally, never taking breaks, never having control over his own schedule. He'd thought it was success, thought it was the price of fame, but it was something else. It was a prison Colonel had built so carefully that Elvis had never even seen the bars. "Mr. Webb," Elvis said without turning around, "you said you were fired yesterday. What are you going to do now?" "I don't know. Find another job, I guess, if I can. If those men don't—" He stopped. Elvis turned around. "You're going to work for me. Security consultant, whatever title you want. You'll have a salary, benefits, protection. Those men come near you or your family again, they'll have to go through my security team. Deal?" Thomas's eyes filled with tears. "Mr. Presley, I can't ask you to—" "You're not asking, I'm telling you. You risked everything to tell me the truth. That's worth protecting." After Thomas went with Charlie, who was instructed to get him a hotel room and assign him a security detail, Elvis sat alone in his dressing room, the documents spread around him. His hands were shaking, not from the pills he'd taken earlier, from rage, pure, burning rage. Colonel had stolen from him for 18 years, had controlled him, manipulated him, built an empire on Elvis's talent while making sure Elvis never realized he was being exploited. But what could he do about it? Colonel had connections everywhere, lawyers, judges, studio executives, record company presidents. If Elvis accused Colonel publicly, it would be Elvis's word against a man who'd built relationships with every powerful person in the entertainment industry. Unless Elvis had proof, real, documented, undeniable proof. And now, thanks to Thomas Webb, he did.
Elvis spent the next 3 days locked in his suite, going through every page of Thomas Webb's documents. And what he discovered wasn't just theft. It was something far more sinister. A pattern that suggested Colonel had been planning something terrible. Elvis didn't sleep, couldn't sleep. He'd sent word that he was sick, canceled 3 shows, which made Colonel furious, but Elvis didn't care. He had to understand the full scope of what had been done to him. Thomas came to the suite every day, bringing more documents he'd hidden before being fired. Together, they built a timeline. 1956, first contracts signed. Forgery likely occurred within weeks. 1958 to 1960, Elvis in the Army. During this time, Colonel renegotiated multiple deals, always increasing his own percentage. 1961 to 1969, movie period. All serious film offers rejected. Elvis locked into formulaic productions that maximized Colonel's income. 1968, comeback special. Elvis had fought for this, wanted to prove he could still perform. Colonel had tried to block it, but NBC went around him. The special was a massive success. 1969 to 1974, Las Vegas residencies begin. Elvis locked into venues and schedules that kept him in one place, under Colonel's control. But there was something else in the documents, something that made Elvis's blood run cold. Life insurance policies. Multiple policies taken out by Colonel with Elvis as the insured party. Total value, $45 million. Beneficiary on all of them, Colonel Tom Parker. Elvis called Thomas into his bedroom.
These insurance policies, when were they taken out? Thomas checked his notes. Various dates, but most of them were purchased or increased in 1970 and 1971, right after you started the Vegas residencies. Why would Colonel insure me for $45 million? Standard practice for valuable business assets. If something happened to you, Colonel would lose his income source. The insurance protects him financially. But Thomas, think about it. If I'm alive, Colonel gets 50% of what I earn. Well, 75% actually, based on the real numbers. But if I die, Colonel gets $45 million all at once. Plus, he owns Elvis Presley forever. No more arguments, no more fights about movie scripts or tour schedules, just a perfect, frozen legend that keeps making money. Mr. Presley, you're talking about murder. I'm talking about motive. And look at this. Elvis showed Thomas another document. Medical records from Dr. Nick, Elvis's personal physician. These are prescriptions Colonel authorized. Look at the combinations. Look at the dosages. Thomas read through them. He wasn't a doctor, but even he could see something was wrong. These are dangerous interactions. Some of these medications shouldn't be taken together. Exactly. Dr. Nick has warned me about this, said I'm taking too much, but Colonel always overrules him, says I need the medications to maintain my schedule, to perform, to cope with the pressure. Elvis laughed bitterly. What if Colonel doesn't want me healthy? What if he wants me dependent, deteriorating? What if he's been slowly killing me for years, making it look natural? The room fell silent. The accusation hung in the air, terrible and impossible to ignore. "We need to go to the police," said Thomas finally. "With what? These documents prove financial fraud, yes, but attempted murder? That's just my theory, a theory that will sound paranoid coming from a man everyone knows is on prescription medications. Colonel will say I'm having a breakdown, that the drugs have made me unstable. And who will they believe? Me or the respected manager who's worked in this industry for 30 years? Then what do we do?" Elvis stood up and walked to the window again. Below, tourists flooded the Vegas Strip, seeking entertainment and escape, none of them knowing that in a suite above them, a man was deciding whether to fight back against his own murder in progress or just let it happen. We build a real case, not just financial documents, everything. I want to know everywhere Colonel has been, everyone he's paid, every decision he's made. I want phone records, meeting schedules, travel itineraries. I want to know what he's planning and when he's planning to do it. That could take months. Then we have months, because I'm not going down without a fight.